A steel ring, 68 inches across, no bolt through it, nothing welded, nothing pinned. That ring is a locomotive tire, and on Union Pacific's Big Boy, each one carries about 33,000 pounds of machine by itself. 10 times in railway history, one of them came apart. And every single time, the decision that killed those people had already been made, years earlier, in a foundry, by a man who never knew he had made it. Have you ever put your hand on a steam locomotive driving wheel? Tell me where, in the comments. This is what American Ironworks does. Take the machine apart, find what it was hiding. Subscribe so you catch the next one. Start with how the tire stays on, because it is nothing you would guess. The ring is machined slightly too small, not by much. About a millimeter of squeeze around a wheel the size of a dinner table. Then it goes into a ring of fire. Heat makes steel grow. After about 20 minutes over a propane burner, the ring is wide enough to drop over the wheel center. The crew lowers the wheel inside and kills the flame. The steel cools. It shrinks back onto the wheel center and clamps. That grip is the attachment. There is no second one. Engineers call it an interference fit, which is a polite way of saying the two pieces of metal are fighting each other forever, and the fight is what holds the train together. Big Boy weighs 762,000 pounds. 540,000 of those pounds sit on 16 driving wheels, and every single one of them is a cast center with a ring squeezed around it. Some designs add a retaining ring in a groove, hammered flat by a hydraulic press. That ring is a backstop. It is not what carries the load. If you want to know how much this one part mattered, look at a logo you have already seen 100 times. 3 rings stacked. It has been stamped on Krupp steel since 1875. On rails, on ships, on artillery, on a good share of the industrial output of Germany. Those rings are not decoration. They are a drawing of this exact component. Alfred Krupp patented the seamless forged and rolled railway tire in Prussia in 1853, built one of the largest fortunes in European history on it, and then put the product on his own letterhead. By the First World War, that mark was registered in 56 countries outside Germany. So this is not some obscure fitting nobody thought about. It is the part that paid for a dynasty. Here is what gets me. Heat put the tire on. And heat is the one thing that can take it off. Every time the brakes come on, the shoes press directly against that tire and turn a train's momentum into temperature. On a long grade, the crew rides the brakes for miles. The tire gets hot, and a hot tire is a tire that has started to let go of its own grip. The American Association of Railroads studied this and found the failures cluster in winter. Cold rail, cold metal, long brake applications. 1987, Pueblo, Colorado, and the pattern was already a century old by then. None of this is filed away as history either. Open the United States Federal Code today. Title 49, Part 230, still governs steam locomotives running on American track, and it still carries a table of minimum tire thicknesses. For the heaviest axles, it demands 2 inches of steel and will not accept less. It lists what condemns a tire, and the numbers are exact. A flat spot 2.5 inches long takes the wheel out of service. So does a tread worn hollow by 5/16 of an inch, or a rim that has thinned below 1 inch. Then there is one line that tells you precisely what shops used to do when a tire went slack. Prick punching or shimming the wheel fit will not be permitted. Read that again. The regulation names the bodge. Somebody was hammering shims into loose tires often enough that a federal rulebook had to forbid it by name. For 174 years, the only routine test for any of this was a man with a hammer. He walked the length of the train and struck every wheel and listened. A sound tire rings. A cracked one thuds the same way a cracked bell does. That was the system. Nothing else was watching, and it ran an industrial civilization. Number 10. Southall, England. The 24th of May, 1847. A Great Western Express is running up from Exeter behind a locomotive named Queen. Her driving wheels are 7 feet across, taller than the men standing next to them. One of those 7-foot tires breaks. 2 drovers on a passing train are killed. It is the only confirmed failure of a locomotive driving wheel tire in the entire record, and it happens in the first decade of mainline railways. Number 9. Basingstoke, the 13th of March, 1852. The official return gives it in 4 words: tire failure. Driver and fireman killed. No inquiry narrative survives, no names. 2 men on a footplate, and the record of what took them fits on 1 line. Number 8. Reading, the 6th of October, 1856. The express from Penzance to Paddington. Derails when a tire fails. 2 dead, 1 injured. 3 accidents in 9 years, and each one kills 2 people. That number is about to change, and it changes in the direction nobody expects. Number 7. Tottenham Station, London. 20 minutes past 10 in the morning, the 20th of February, 1860. The train is running in from Cambridge at between 35 and 40 miles an hour. The tire on the engine's left leading wheel breaks, not once, in several places at the same time. The company's own secretary, a man named J.B. Owen, described what they found afterwards. The tire of one of the leading wheels was off the wheel, broken in several places. 7 people die. Among them, the engine driver, William Rowell, and his fireman, recorded in the papers only as Mr. Barber. Rowell dies of crushing, scalding, and head injuries. He is on the footplate of a machine whose front wheel has just disassembled itself underneath him, and there is a boiler at his back. That is where the death toll stops being 2. And from here, the story stops being about tires that break and starts being about a date. Because nothing was wrong with any of these wheels on the morning they failed. Not one of them had been damaged the day before. The damage was already inside. Number 6. Portland, New York. Christmas Eve, 1872. A Pennsylvania Railroad passenger train goes off a bridge. 30 people are killed and at least 18 more are hurt. The record of that night gives the cause as a broken flange on the tender. Now, the flange is the lip on the inside edge of the tire. It keeps the wheel on the rail, and it is not a separate part, it is machined into the tire itself. Nobody in 1872 wrote down whether the flange broke off the tire or the tire broke and took the flange with it. That distinction mattered enormously, and nobody had the job of recording it. 30 dead on Christmas Eve and 3 words in a ledger. Number 5. Shipton-on-Cherwell, Oxfordshire. Christmas Eve, 1874. 2 years later, almost to the hour. A Great Western train has left Paddington for Birkenhead. It is doing about 40 miles an hour. The tire that fails is not on the locomotive. It is on the wheel of an old third-class carriage riding just behind the tender, and it is an obsolete design. A tire riveted to the wheel rather than shrunk onto it. It cracks at a rivet hole. The driver brakes immediately and sounds his whistle to warn the guard. The guard does not hear it. The train has no continuous brake, so the only brakes that go on are the ones the driver controls. 34 people die. 69 are seriously injured. It is the worst accident caused by a tire failure in British history. Colonel William Yolland of the Board of Trade runs the inquiry. His inspectorate comes back with 2 recommendations that will reshape the railway. Fit continuous automatic brakes so that every vehicle stops when the driver decides. And stop building wheels like that one. 2 Christmas Eves, 64 dead. And in both cases, the flaw that killed them had been sitting in the metal since the day the part was made. That number doesn't fit the story most people know about Victorian railways. Which surprises you more, how many died, or how long it took anyone to act. Number 4. The Blaukrantz Bridge, South Africa. The 22nd of April, 1911. A Koei railway train comes off the approach to the bridge. 30 people are killed. The inquiry records the cause as a wheel defect on a freight car. It never says which part of the wheel. 30 deaths, and the file has never been more specific than those 4 words. Now here is where the whole story turns, and it turns in a direction that makes the rest of this video difficult to explain. Because Britain fixed this. Not with better inspection and not with tighter rules. They got rid of the part. In 1880, British Railways recorded 1,238 wheel failures. By 1920, that figure was 20. 20. A drop of 98% in 40 years, and it happened because the industry stopped fitting a separate tire onto a wheel center and started forging the whole wheel in one piece. No fit to relax, no grip to lose, no seam for a crack to start at. The engineers of the 1890s looked at a failure mode that had been killing people since the 1840s, and they did not manage it. They deleted it. That is not a small thing, and almost nobody knows it happened. A Victorian industry took a lethal engineering problem and closed it permanently, with no computers and no crack detection of any kind, by changing the shape of the part. So the story should end there. It does not end there. Number 3. Lytham, Lancashire. The 3rd of November, 1924. The 440 Liverpool Express is running along the Filder coast at 50 miles an hour. The driver is William Charles Crooks, 67 years old, of Buchanan Street, Blackpool. The front left tire comes off. The engine loses the rail at a crossing, strikes a bridge, demolishes the signal box, and the train rolls over and catches fire. 14 people die at the scene and in the days after. Some counts put it at 15. Colonel John Wallace Pringle of the Ministry of Transport investigates, and he finds a piece of the tire 50 yards away in a field. What he finds inside that piece is the reason this video exists. The tire had a large internal blowhole, a void, a bubble of nothing, formed while the steel was being cast. It had been in there since the day the tire was made, in 1920. That tire then ran more than 100,000 miles, perfectly. That tire was not wearing out. Nothing about it was getting weaker in any way a fitter could have measured. It was counting down. Every mile that locomotive ran took a little more metal off the tread and brought the running surface a little closer to the hole. 4 years of service, 100,000 miles. And on the 3rd of November, 1924, the wear finally reached the void, and the tire had nothing left underneath it. Nobody could have found that. There was no way to look inside the steel. A man with a hammer would have heard a sound tire, because until that morning, it was a sound tire. The timer was set in 1920 in a steelworks, by nobody in particular. It went off 4 years later at 50 miles an hour with 14 people on board. Number 2. Eschede, Germany. The 3rd of June, 1998. Train YCE 884 is running from Munich to Hamburg at 200 kilometers per hour, 125 miles per hour. The wheels under it are not solid. They are a wheel body, then a 20mm ring of rubber, then a steel tire on the outside. Somebody in the 1980s looked at the one-piece wheel that had ended this problem, put a separate tire back on it with rubber underneath, and did it because passengers said the carriages were noisy. A fatigue crack had been growing inside that wheel. 6 kilometers south of Eschede, the tire splits and peels off. It comes up through the floor of the first carriage. It pierces an armrest in a compartment between the seats where a woman and her son are sitting. Her husband, Jörg Dittmann, sees it happen. He gets his family out of those seats. He goes looking for the emergency brake and cannot find one in the corridor. So he finds a conductor. The conductor does not stop the train. He wants to inspect the damage first, which is what his training says, and the two of them start walking back toward carriage 1. At 10:59, the tire lodged in that floor strikes the guide rail of a set of points and lifts the bogie off the track. A derailed wheel then hits the lever of a second set of points and changes them. That throws the rear axles of carriage 3 onto a parallel track, and carriage 3 goes sideways into the piers holding up a 300-ton road bridge. The bridge comes down on the train. 101 people are killed. 88 are severely injured. Here is the number that should end any argument about rules keeping people safe. That wheel was legal. When it was new, it measured 920 millimeters across. The old German Federal Railway set the minimum at 854. The wheel that failed had worn to 862. It was 8 millimeters inside the limit. It passed every check it was given, and it disintegrated at 125 miles per hour. After the accident, the Fraunhofer Institute looked at the design and said the limit should have been 880 millimeters all along, 26 millimeters higher than the number in the book. Investigators found the fatigue behavior of that wheel had never been properly assessed before approval. Deutsche Bahn's answer was a fleet statistic. 6 years in service, 10 billion kilometers, no incident. Both of those are true at once, and that is what makes it so hard to file away. The wheel was inside the rules, and the rules were wrong, and nobody found out which until 101 people were dead. 2 railway officials and an engineer were charged with manslaughter. The case ended in a plea bargain, each engineer paid 10,000 euros, and nobody was convicted. Which brings me to number 1, and I want to be straight about why it is number 1, because it did not kill anybody. The 16th of July, 2021. The Manx Electric Railway on the Isle of Man. Car number 16 derails near Llywelyn with 12 people aboard, and 1 passenger is thrown out and breaks a leg. The investigation finds a clear brittle fracture in the tire on the left-hand side of the leading axle, and every tire on that car worn below any recognized limit. Then it finds this. The tires and axles had not been inspected before the car went out, and they had not been hammer tested. If they had been, investigators said, it was highly probable the faulty tires would have been found. So somebody finally picked up the hammer after the derailment and struck them. Only 2 rang. That is the worst one on this list. Not because of the injuries, because of the date. This is 5 years ago on a working railway, and the failure was sitting there in a sound nobody had listened for. Depot staff had no wheel set standards, no measuring equipment, and nobody with an engineering qualification checking the vehicles. Look at what 174 years produced. Southall in 1847 killed 2 people. 151 years later, Eschede killed 101. Between those dates, the industry acquired metallurgy, ultrasound, computerized records, and crack detection, and the toll went up 50-fold. It went up because the trains got faster, and the part did not get safer. Every one of these 10 was decided before it happened. The blowhole at Lytham was poured in 1920 and sat there 4 years. At Eschede, the crack had been opening for months under a wheel that kept passing every check it was given. On the Isle of Man, the tires had been finished so long that when somebody finally struck them, most had gone quiet. None of these was an accident in the way we use that word. Each one was a delivery. And the strangest part is that this was solved. British engineers closed it in 1920 by refusing to build the part, and it stayed closed until somebody decided the ride was too noisy. If you have ever wondered why old engineers turn difficult the moment somebody wants to change a design that already works, this is why. Every shape on a working machine is an answer to a question, and most of those questions were asked by an accident. The one-piece wheel is the answer to 1847 and to 1860, and to both of those Christmas Eves. The reason a component looks the way it does has usually been paid for by somebody, and the receipt does not travel with the drawing. That is the whole job at American Ironworks, finding the thing that was solved once and then quietly unsolved by somebody who was not there the first time. Subscribe, and I will show you the next one.